Cold, wet, and alone on the rainy streets of Atlanta, 16-year-old Sade DeAngelo decided it was time to go back home. As she began walking, a man pulled up to her in a nice car and asked her if she wanted a ride. Trustingly, Sade accepted, unaware of the grave mistake that she was making by doing so.
Hello and welcome to In Plain Sight. I'm Ben, and this is Jack. This week, we're talking about the causes and effects of human trafficking and the preventative measures we can take. Human trafficking is a major issue all around the globe. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security defines human trafficking as the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some kind of labor or commercial sex act. According to Homeland Security, it is a crime that is rarely reported due to the fact that many victims do not speak English, and also due to the fact that many of these victims are afraid to report their captors. This issue is especially prevalent in the U.S. Atlanta, due to its proximity to Hartsfield-Jackson, is a major hub for this illegal and inhumane activity. This issue has been identified by the city, and some measures are being implemented to prevent trafficking and bring aid to these trafficked people.
Attempts made by authorities to intervene in human trafficking have been somewhat successful. However, the methods used are not enough. The current tactics focus on training members of organizations like the TSA to identify victims of human trafficking at transit hubs. However, this is not enough. More effort needs to be made to find trafficked individuals who have slipped through these preventative measures and free them. For example, earlier this year, 169 people were arrested before the Super Bowl in a sting operation, proving that a direct approach is much more effective. Additionally, more money needs to be put into educating the public about human trafficking so that private citizens are more able to identify and report instances of human trafficking to the proper authorities. Now let's hear from Annie with a first-hand account of a human trafficking victim's personal experience.
Cold, wet, and alone on the rainy streets of Atlanta, 16-year-old Sade DeAngelo decided it was time to go back home. As she began walking, a man pulled up to her in a nice car and asked her if she wanted a ride. Trustingly, Sade accepted, unaware of the grave mistake that she was making by doing so. Just 2 short minutes into the ride, Sade's abductor pulled a gun on her, forcing her to call her mom and tell her she was not going to come home. For 6 months, Sade did not see or hear from her mother again. She was subjected to harassment and abuse, as well as forced to act as a recruiter for other girls into the same trafficking ring she was sold into. Sade's mother, Angela, while still dedicated to her roles as wife to her husband and mother to Sade's younger siblings, was desperately searching for her daughter. She even went undercover as a sex worker in hopes of finding information, but after several weeks she started to become defeated, as it was beginning to take a great toll on her. Angela put her faith in God and strongly believed that he was going to bring her daughter back to her. One day, Angela had an epiphany and found the number Sade had called her from, and this finally brought her to her daughter. Today, Sade is still in recovery, and it has not been an easy journey. She has also become an advocate for others who are at risk of being abducted and exploited just as she was.
Wow. As you can see, this issue not only affects thousands of girls, but their families as well. With the existing preventative measures used today, it is tough to make a difference in such a lucrative industry. To get a grasp on the depth of this issue, we go now to Elizabeth for more information.
While many are aware that human trafficking is one of the largest issues facing humanity today, the statistics currently present today are shocking even to experts. According to Eliza Griffin, 2018 reports display that human traffickers earn profits of roughly $150 billion a year. In addition, the average age a teen enters the sex trade in the U.S. is between 12 to 23 years old. Since Georgia is the location of the largest international airport in the country, Atlanta is home to one of the biggest human trafficking hubs nationwide. Other aspects of Atlanta life that further drive this issue are frequency of large events and the 4 major interstates that run through the state of Georgia. In the state of Georgia, roughly between 200 to 400 girls get sold online per month. According to the Shapiro Group, 65% of men that purchase these girls live in the suburban areas. Traffickers in Atlanta also make an average of $33,000 million per week. 5,000 girls are at risk to be trafficked in Georgia, while 374 is the average number of girls trafficked in Georgia each month.
Those statistics are astonishing. Hasn't the state of Georgia passed some laws in order to discourage human trafficking, increase penalties, and provide better training to law enforcement?
They have. However, the human trafficking ring continues to grow. Let's bring in Liz, an expert on human trafficking, to provide some advice on how individuals themselves can take preventative measures to lessen the risk of being trafficked.
Human trafficking is a major issue in Atlanta, but there are steps you can take to improve your chances on not being a victim. One of the best things you can do is stay alert at all times. Pay attention to your surroundings instead of focusing on distractions such as your phone, and never get into a car driven by a stranger. Since women and children are the most vulnerable to be attacked and trafficked, they should avoid traveling alone, especially at night. If you happen to be out at night, stay in a group and try to remain in a populated area with plenty of potential witnesses. Also, avoid things that would inhibit your senses and decision-making skills like alcohol. If you so happen to be in a situation where you're confronted by a trafficker, defend yourself as best as you can. Traffickers are less likely to take you if you put up a fight. In situations like these, try to be loud and draw attention to yourself. To alert others nearby to potentially convince the potential captor that you are not worth the trouble. Small actions like these can be the difference between living freely and being forced into captivity. Please do what you have to do to stay safe.
Human trafficking is a very complicated issue with no simple solutions. The current system for preventing the trafficking of individuals allows for many victims to slip through the cracks. Until more direct action, like the sting operation used before this year's Super Bowl, is taken, many victims will remain in captivity.
It is unfortunate that authorities are not 100% effective at stopping instances of human trafficking. If you are at a higher risk of being trafficked, it unfortunately may fall on you to protect yourself until more effective measures are put in place. Always be aware of your surroundings in public places and be wary of suspicious people, especially at places like airports and bars. If you observe activity that you suspect to be trafficking, do not approach the victims or perpetrators. Instead, alert the proper authorities. The number for the National Human Trafficking Resource Center is 1-888-373-7888. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of In Plain Sight, the causes and effects of human trafficking and preventative measures to take. Join us next week when we sit down with first-hand eyewitness accounts of Russian human trafficking during the FIFA World Cup.